All right, so how's this for a start in life? In 1972, Saul Williams' mom went to a James Brown concert.
One more time for the night train, New York City.
She was rushed from the show to Albany Memorial Hospital, where Saul, Stacey Williams, was born. And you'd think whatever Saul heard in vitro that night had a big impact, because just like JB, Saul is an inventor, an innovator, and a tireless source of creative ideas. You know, when he was just 9, he heard this record.
Taking a record that's already made with the help.
It's Yours by Tila Rock. That set him on a path to become a rhymer, but Saul has other interests too. He begged his parents to let him audition for The Cosby Show. They said no, but they did agree to pay for acting classes, so Saul majored in drama, but instead of heading to theater, he hung out in the coffee houses in New York, where a new slam poetry scene was unfolding.
And I can fade worlds in and out with my mixing patterns, letting the earth spin as I blend in Saturn.
He made a name for himself as a spoken word artist, starred in a film called Slam, playing a poet and small-time dealer who winds up in The Slammer.
I'm here at the end of the road, which is the beginning of the road beyond time, but...
Well, did you write that?
Yeah. Slam won the top prize at Sundance, though many more of you probably saw this.
I got a list of demands written on the palm of my hands.
Yeah, that's Saul's music right there. He surprised his fans by allowing Nike to use that track. Some of them called him a sellout. We'll see what he thinks. His latest record is called Volcanic Sunlight, and it represents something new for Saul. It's his first record, he says, that doesn't come from a place of anger.
I feel love when I feel love.
Please welcome Saul Williams. Hey, man. How are you?
Real pleasure, man.
Yeah, this is a trip, man. It's really nice to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
First record to not come from a place of anger. Is that something you said because it sounded catchy, or is that real?
No, that's real.
Yeah.
That's real. For me, every project that I do, I really am challenging myself. Most of my work is residue from the work that I'm doing on myself. And I felt like I had produced a lot of work that gave the idea or the impression of me being some angry, politicized, what have you. And yeah, there's anger, there's always politics, but I wanted to explore sharing other parts of me. You know, at the end of the day, I think that love is way more important than anger,
right,
for example. And so I need some songs to support the idea.
But does love change the world? Because, and here's why I ask. It's amazing that as we mature and find different ways to dive into ourselves,
yeah,
for many people, there are still mountains of injustice.
Well, I think the main thing is, one, you know, you have to keep a sense of humor if you can afford to do that. Yeah. Keep a sense of humor. And yeah, I think that love does change the world. I mean, if we think of people like Martin Luther King or anyone from Gandhi to, you know, we list tons of people and see the influence that they had on humanity. Whether it was a passion for or a love for, it doesn't have to necessarily be an intimate idea of love. Right. It can be an expanded idea of love for humanity, an expanded idea of love for change. But love, for me, is, you know, is a form of energy, like wind, solar, what have you. We run off of it.
Right.
We burn off of it.
Now, there was a time when everybody really celebrated the concept of a poet. And when people talk about poets, again, they talk about poets from a bygone era, in a sense. How's the concept of being a poet changed, do you think, over the years?
I'm not sure if the concept of being a poet has actually changed over the years. I think what I love about poetry is that it's something that is and has been. We can go on and on about slam poetry being new, and yes, the idea of competition in poetry you could say is new if you're not familiar with the history of the Olympics and you don't know that the Greeks competed in poetry and you don't know the history of the troubadours, then yeah, you can think it's new. But there's really nothing new about it. What excites me about poetry today and slam poetry and all that stuff is not the fact that it's this new thing. It's actually more so that in light of all of the media and these screens and this beautiful technology that we have decided to gather to celebrate something ancient. Something ancient that always has been and always will be. And, you know, I think that the idea of being a poet or what have you, but for me it was very frightening to think of myself as a poet. For years, even after slam, I wouldn't refer to myself as a poet. People ask me, what do you do? I go, oh, I write. Oh, what do you write? I write poems. So you're a poet? I write poems at times. You know, but it had more so to do with the fact that I felt like it's a gift to be called that, and maybe I felt somewhat arrogant if I called myself that. Right. And so I had to really find my footing underneath that title because it really felt like an honor to be called that.
What does it mean to you to be an activist today?
Well, what it means, I guess, to be an activist today, it can be many things, you know. I had an older sister who was an activist when she was in university during the apartheid era, and she'd come home and be like, we're not buying any more Coca-Cola products. We're not buying Reebok because they're invested in South Africa right now. And I was, 10 years old, like, what's apartheid? Why can't I have Coca-Cola? What do you mean? But my parents were like, nope. She said, we're not buying it, we're not buying it. And so it's that.
Well, then was your family pissed at you then when you sold your song to Nike?
No, not at all. Not at all. Like for me, it's like, I guess on one hand, maybe it would have struck me differently if I had been asked to write a song for Nike, Yeah. But for them to come to me 4 years after a song was written and say, we want to put this in a commercial, me, I felt like they were doing a commercial for me more than they were for themselves. I don't know how many people watch Nike commercials and go, I want to go buy the Nike, but I know that people hear a song and go, what is that song?
Yeah, for sure.
And I know I'm very certain of the energy that I place into my music. And I don't believe, like I've been doing a dance with the so-called powers that be from the time I put out my first album, Slam, which, my first movie, Slam, which came out through Trimark, which was, a big corporation, or my first album, which came out through Sony, which was a big corporation. So maintaining my independence as an artist doesn't always have to mean that I'm not working with major companies. All of my books come out through MTV, for example.
Yeah, what's wrong with getting paid too, right?
Yeah, well, there's that. There's nothing wrong with getting paid, but there's also something important about getting that work out there and realizing, I'm not here to handpick who my fans are.
Right.
And so when football players come up to me on the airplane, pro football players, and they're totally like, yo, man, I listen to you when I work out. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hey, that song, man, is saying something, right?
Exactly. And it never stops saying anything regardless of who plays it.
It's an interesting place for you to be because because obviously people do look to you to be. You're at the forefront of this conversation. So I read the letter that you had written after the criticism you got from Nike. I thought you handled it very well. Then there's the part of you that said that this song is for also those people working in the factories making the shoes, right? And did you have to really struggle with the decision to sell the song?
No, in fact, I didn't have an option. I was in Morocco at the time, and I was taking off, and my phone rang. It was my manager, and she was like, hey, Nike has made a commercial using your song. They want to run it during American Idol on Wednesday. It was Monday. She was like, I need an approval, yes or no, right now.
That was it?
That was it.
Oh, what a moment.
It was easy. I was just like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but hey, man, people found out a lot.
No, it was real simple. Because I knew a few other things, which was that the global head of marketing for Nike wanted me to meet me and all this stuff. And so as soon as I had the opportunity to sit down, I was like, so what is it about these sweatshops? Is it true?
He said that?
Oh, hell yeah, I still communicate with him. And he was like, oh my God, you're asking me the same thing my daughter asked me. He's like, look, this is what we're doing. By 2011, all of our factories will be transparent. We're working on this. I got an opportunity to not sit on the sideline and throw up middle fingers, but to go in and be like, so what's up? Is that right?
Right.
Is that what you guys are doing?
Well, you can change the system from within as well, right?
Well, yeah. You can change it from any and every angle.
Has the conversation about the civil rights movement gone away in America? In the racial conversation, has it changed? Should it still be had? We see this veiled stuff with the Tea Party and Barack Obama, the president. It just seems like race is still bubbling in a very real way there.
Well, for me, it's really fatiguing. Primarily because, one, I'm really clear on the fact that race is a social construct. That it doesn't exist. It's something that we practice. We practice the idea of race as if it were real.
Yeah. It's true, right?
Yeah. And then we associate with the idea of like, oh, I'm a white guy. I have guys come up to me. I'm just a white guy from Montana, but I love your album. I'm like, well, why do you think of yourself as just, like you're a person.
Yeah.
Just like I am.
But do you identify
my
as
album is made for
African-American?
you. Yeah, when it's convenient. When it's convenient. And then I go to, then I go to something like, I go to Africa or something. I go to Senegal, and I'm like, holy crap. I think I'm more American-African than African-American, or something like, you see the cultural differences or something, I think that the racial dialogue in America, on one hand, is necessary to an extent, but then you have to leave it alone and acknowledge that it's a social construct.
Right.
And that if you become too engaged, too reactionary, then you start basing your life and your principles on this idea that is simply that, an idea. And the final and the end point has to be humanity as one. We are one. And so if we don't push beyond the idea of race, you know, then we're stuck. We're stuck with it, because basically what we're talking about is tribe.
Right.
You know, it's absurd.
That's incredible. You can check Saul out. He's at the in Toronto tomorrow at the Great Hall, Saturday at La Tulipe in Montreal. The record here, it's really great. It's called Volcanic Sunlight. Saul Williams, everybody. We'll be right back.
All right, so how's this for a start in life? In 1972, Saul Williams' mom went to a James Brown concert.
One more time for the night train, New York City.
She was rushed from the show to Albany Memorial Hospital, where Saul, Stacey Williams, was born. And you'd think whatever Saul heard, no. But they did agree to pay for acting classes, so Saul majored in drama. But instead of heading to theater, he hung out in the coffee houses in New York, where a new slam poetry scene was unfolding.
And I can fade worlds in and out with my mixing patterns, letting the earth spin as I blend in Saturn.
He made a name for himself as a spoken word artist, starred in a film called Slam, playing a poet and small-time dealer who winds up in the Slammer.
I'm here at the end of the road, which is the beginning of the road beyond time, but...
What movie did I think? Did you write that?
Yeah. Slam won the top prize at Sundance, though many more of you probably saw this.
I got a list of demands written on the palm of my hands.
Yeah, that's Saul's music right there. He surprised his fans by allowing Nike to use that track. Some of them called him a sellout. We'll see what he thinks. In Vitro that night had a big impact, because just like JB, Saul is an inventor, an innovator, and a tireless source of creative ideas. You know, when he was just 9, he heard this record.
Taking a record that's already made with the help.
It's Yours by tyrLoserKing. That set him on a path to become a rhymer, but Saul has other interests too. He begged his parents to let him audition for The Cosby Show. They said his latest record is called Volcanic Sunlight, and it represents something new for Saul. It's his first record, he says, that doesn't come from a place of anger.